This episode is brought to you by Muntins Malts, a company that is passionate about providing premium malts to brewers worldwide. For over a century, Muntins has been a leading supplier of brewing and distilling malts, offering the finest British malted barley on the market. You can experience the difference Muntins offers by joining a recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club, because every kit that ships out now includes premium Muntins malt. You know, we've known the Muntins crew for a long time, and I can tell you, friend, you're going to love brewing with their grains. Ask your local supply shop to carry Muntins malts, or homebrewers can join our Trub Club at homebrewhappyhour.com/club, be a part of the community, and come brew with us. Thank you, Muntins, for supporting our efforts and homebrewers worldwide. Today's show is brought to you by Hopsdirect.com. Grown in the esteemed Yakima Valley on the Pewterball family farm, Hopsdirect.com offers the widest variety of hops available online at incredibly competitive pricing. It's simple. They grow hops, they sell hops, and they ship hops straight from their family-owned farm to your doorstep. Producing the highest quality hops is Hopsdirect.com's passion, and they're proud to be an independent grower in the craft beer industry. Go to Hopsdirect.com right now and get what you need to make your brew day better. That's Hopsdirect.com. Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Pressure fermentation on lagers versus ales. Is pressure fermentation appropriate for every style? And other stuff about pressure fermentation, because I don't think I've said pressure fermentation enough in this intro. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 346. Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. And if you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com. You can click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or even better, hear me out, use our hotline 325-305-6107. Leave a voicemail, question, or feedback. I use it on a future episode, and you get a $25 gift card to ketconnection.com, courtesy of the absent Todd Burns, because in his place, I have a better person. All this stuff about pressure fermentation, people were tuning in thinking, geez, this guy's really didn't just milk this shtick that he's the new expert. But it's not. I brought on who I consider my authority on pressure fermentation in my life. Anytime I have a question, I actually go to you in the text messages first. But it's my buddy, Jonathan Marut. He's back on the show. Jonathan, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing very good. Good to be here.
Thank you for doing this. Kind of late notice. I mean, I think I asked you Monday, so I appreciate you making the time, because between the two of us, I mean, we both have full-time jobs. We both work, but you work. You have a real job. I work for Todd. Oh, no. What is this going on here? Oh, okay. I don't know if that took away the screen here. I'm not going to edit that out. My computer was trying to force an update middle of this. Go figure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And also, thank you for recording this earlier in the day. We normally, I'm trying to, I mentioned it last week. the recommendation on the video side of stuff, at least, was like, if you published it midday, you would get more engagement, da da da. Well, our first go at it, nothing in the metrics did it, but I'm committed to trying this and publishing on Thursdays midday. So I appreciate you doing it. It also makes the lighting weird, though, in my office, because the natural lighting, I'm not normally this pale. This is all camera.
That's why I asked you about the lighting, because yours is like very cool light.
It's very blue, cool, right? Light. Very cool light.
And mine's like,
look how pale I look. I look sickly, actually. The Homebrew Health Hour, where y'all diagnosed me based off my skin complexion. I'm too close to the camera now. But anyway, I do appreciate it. First off, great shirt. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Kolsch Cup 2023. And you've entered the Alt Pokal. I'll get to my small talk on the Alt Pokal in a little bit. The shirt, I had someone tell me, and now I can't get it out of my head, the foam I drew on top of it, they said it looks like Richard Simmons from the 80s.
Oh.
His hair. And now I kind of see a Richard Simmons beard. And then the other feedback I actually get, it's critical, but it's not. It's in good taste. They're like, why didn't you do a stang, well, instead of a mug? Because it's a Kolsch. Yeah. And I was like, because I couldn't fit the word Kolsch on that.
That's true.
It had to be vertical. But anyways, before I get to having you and small talk and catching up with you, let me get through some of the small talk I have to get through because especially it's the end of the month. Today is literally the last day of the month. Oh, can I come over here? There we go. Boom. Now I'm on the screen. Friends, Alt Pokal is coming up. We did set the deadline of today, August 31st, being the last day, and there's 4 spots available. Last week there was 5. Then we had 3 people drop out. Then we had 2 people join up, if my math is right. So, or maybe 3 or 4 from there. But either way, we do have 4 spots available. So let me put it on the screen. There you go. The Alt Pokal. If you go to altpokal.com, that's ALTPOKAL.com, it'll take you to a landing page on Homebrew Happy Hour, all about it. It has the registration link there. It has the rules. It has the dates, the deadlines, everything. We did push it back a week. So that just means more time for your delicious alt to get better, to mature. What's the word I'm looking for? Condition. Because a lot of people signed up. We launched it, I think, like August 3rd, or we launched it early this month, and people started brewing immediately. Have you already brewed your alt, or have you not gotten to it yet?
Yeah, I brewed it, and it's already in keg and everything. Was drinking some the other day, so. You
happy with it?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's good. It's kind of like a Marson. It's a little drier, I would say, than a Marson, So good beer for this kind of year.
Yeah, I always
this time of year.
Like when people ask me, because it's very difficult to find a commercial alt in the States, right? You're in our area. I mean, you're closer to the Keg Connection headquarters than you are to me here in St. Marcus, but you're in the Fort Worth area. I don't know if you even have a go-to alt that's not from Fredericksburg, and they even changed their name. Yeah. They don't even call it an alt anymore. They call it their amber.
Right.
Possibly because it's not an alt, but I will say this though, a lot of commercial examples here, Alaskan, I don't know if they still call theirs an alt. That's also kind of more of an amber, but there's this weird Venn diagram, right, of overlap where you're like, it's like a dunkel, and it's not. I mean, but like the malt profile has this Venn diagram of it, so it'll be I think it's gonna be fun. James is like, I don't think he's very confident it's not going to be like the Kolsch Cup where just banger after banger, everyone we were trying like, this is great. He thinks the alt is going to be some discrepancies between first and the end because people just don't know necessarily, right? They're brewing
if you take your recipe, the one you guys use for the Trub Club and kind of base it on that, I would think they'd all be pretty good.
I do too. And we'll talk here in a little bit too about any given style of the factors that can affect it when using pressure, not using pressure, temperature, all that stuff, right? So I'll tie all that in relevant. But yes, friends, if you want to see if you've got the best alt beer in the world, in the continental U.S. more realistically, but we could have international people, go to altpokal.com. sign up. There's 4 spots left. I've actually been on it pretty quick about sending out the invoice. If you're in the Trub Club, obviously you get half off your entry. I believe it's half off. Oh, it's 25. And the normal entry is 40, 25. Everybody gets their scorecard mailed to them and an event t-shirt. Jonathan, you're going for the trophy though. You're expecting to get a nice big grand champion trophy mailed out to you.
That'd be cool.
It would be cool.
Yeah.
I've been telling people that I can't do it with these because our community, our audience, but I do want to create some competition that I rig for myself because my shelf is absent of trophies. And so I don't even care about the prestige of who's hosting the event. I just want to spend Todd's $120, whatever the trophy cost us, and put it on my shelf when people come over like, well, you won? Yes, I did. Don't ask for.
Well, I mean, I think you're winning anyway, because I mean, like, especially with Kolsch Cup, right? You like Kolsch. And so you get like 50 examples of Kolsch mailed to you and you drink it. I mean, that's kind of winning right there.
Dude, I'm living the dream. I am convinced that this is a simulation that we all exist in for my benefit. Like y'all are just part of it. I'm not even sure if you're real, but but you're sending me and you sent me Kolsch. I will say you got your scorecard, right? And I want to be very clear with people because we had in the Kolsch Cup like 2 of the 40 or 39 or whatever we ended up with right back kind of like, I don't think y'all are actually BJCP judges. The feedback, I was like, no, we're not. So let me be very clear. If you're new listening to this or someone directed you like, oh yeah, my friend Jerry told me to sign up because he said my alt is good. Just saying that I think I gave great feedback. If anyone wants to argue with me, email me, joshua@homebrewhappyhour.com. But we are not as detailed and thorough. I've seen what real judges do, and yes, those people are great at actually giving. In this part, the waft of this or that, where ours wasn't as caveman-esque as like this beer good, this beer bad. But I just don't. I want people to mitigate their expectations and not think like we're gonna give you as best and thorough. Especially the Kolsch for me was difficult because I didn't want to be redundant with words, and then I realized no, these people aren't talking to each other. If the same adjective words for this scorecard as this one, it's okay to use it. Do you know what I mean? I was getting in my head like, no, I got to find a different way to say this. No, I don't. No, I don't at all if it's relevant to it. So going into the alt pokal, I'm confident like, oh, okay, I'm not going to be scared to say the same thing if it's applicable, not just saying it for the sake of it. But anyways, that's all to say. Go to altpokal.com, sign up today. You've got today. And then we're going to just shut it down with whatever we have, which is like 36 right now. So, which is fine because that'll make judging a little more smooth and streamlined. And I'm about to place an order for all the shirts and stuff. So anyways, yes, altpokal.com. Also, before we get into the episode, let me see if I can put it on the screen. Last call for this as well. Recipe receiving members of our Patreon Trub Club are getting the Comanche Moon Summer Ale. I shipped them out this week already for everyone who's already a part of it, but it's not too late. If you go to patreon.com/Homebrew Happy Hour, join the monthly recipe receiving tier, or if you join the every other month and you really want this one, we can work it out. But go to patreon.com/Homebrew Happy Hour. Join one of those tiers, and you're going to get the delicious Comanche Moon Summer Ale. It's like a blonde, wheat blonde, a little bit of body to it. Todd loves it. It's fermenting, I think he brewed it. I don't remember when he brewed it, but yes, patreon.com/Homebrew Happy Hour. Thank you to our incredible sponsors. You heard them at the top of the show, but I always have to thank them. Muntons Malt, Hopsdirect.com, and of course, our oldest and longest withstanding sponsor, our friends at Imperial Yeast. I will say, Jonathan, every summer, this summer especially, 100, has it been below 100 for you in the afternoons for a month? Right? It's basically,
well, we had a couple days, was it last week, I guess?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been brutal.
Liquid yeast. Yeah. I've been trying to be as good as, like, trying to get our FedEx guy to get it in the cool of the day, to take it to the distribution center where it's not quite temperature controlled, but it's not just in a truck. You know what I mean? So like, thankfully for the most part, I haven't had to ship out. Like I had one guy, I sent out a replacement pack. I 2-day FedExed it. Very expensive. Todd, I promise it was worth it. These people, we want to take care of these, our Trub Club members, and we want them, but more importantly, the yeast is, I think you'd agree with me, yeast is a crucial part for the end result of how your beer turns out. And
you don't have yeast, you don't have beer.
Exactly. And the integrity of said yeast is very vital to, like, if the viability is not there, you're under pitching on accident, or it's not going to fully ferment out, or you could lead to a stalled fermentation. I mean, if it's not a viable pack, and thankfully Imperial, it's 200 billion cells. That's way more than I can count to. I think actually literally you can't count that high. It takes like 1,000 years or something. But anyway, they have so many cells, and so when I ice pack them and I coordinate with the FedEx guy, I pick up at this time and then all this stuff. It's as good as I can, but sometimes they end up bloated. But people, they'll do starters and it still turns out decent. And people who haven't done starters are like, oh no, it turned out great. We just want them to get these ingredients and brew and have the batch end up as intended, right? Not to be content, but we're using premium ingredients, so we want these recipes to end up that way. So all that to say is the summer's been scaring me, man, with liquid yeast in the post. It's so brutally hot here. I cannot wait for fall. I cannot wait for winter. There was a month, it was February. When did it last freeze all over Texas? It was like February.
Yeah, February.
And I didn't have to
closed for a week.
I didn't have to use ice packs at all that month. That's the only time in the history of Trub Club where I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 38 degrees here and it's not getting above it. Yeah, we're just shipping these out. This is great. I don't need to be redundant. I would love that all the time. But anyways, so again, last call for the Comanche Moon Summer Ale at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. Join a recipe receiving tier. Come brew with us. Join the community. All that stuff. And then one last announcement. Oh, do I not have it on here? Maybe I don't have it on here anymore. The Kolschtange is, the picture's not working right now. Oh, well, I'll put that up there. Pretend like we're all looking at that right now. Whoa, beautiful glassware. I ordered Kolsch, and I already forget how to say it, Stange. They are coming in. They were supposed to be in this week, and then Grandstand, who we ordered them from, was like, oh, yeah, they'll be there next week, as in a week from today. So either way, people in our Trub Club, I'm going to ship them out to you. The $5 tier and up is what we've decided, because I didn't even realize we had a $1 tier. And this is not to say we're not grateful for the people on the $1 tier. Thank you so much for even considering to give us stuff. But we did the math, and the $1 tier, I think we get 72 cents out of it. And the shipping on these is all I was really trying to cover. Is going to be like $5.80 or $5.90 for the average to ship it out USPS, and obviously I'm going to wrap them very well, but I just wanted to try to cover shipping. I can spend Todd's money all day, and if it's not a big hit where he's like, one year I did that. I think the first Kolsch Cup dude, I did that where he was like, you realize you bought this like $130 trophy, and the shirts, the way you ordered them, they cost us each like $12 or whatever. He did the math. He goes, we lost a little bit, man. And I was like, oh yeah, I should do math before sending stuff out to people. So I'm just trying to cover the shipping, friends, but I'll put it on the screen. Ooh, movie magic. It's there. Kolschtanges, they are coming soon to members of patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. That's all the small talk. Sorry for all that boring stuff for you. Todd and James aren't here because they're entertaining CMB Schankenlagen. Our buddy Stefan from Germany is in town at headquarters. I was there earlier this week hanging out with him. And then our buddy Daniel from Portugal, the CMB branch over in Portugal, he's there as well. Really funny, quick anecdote. People are tired of this because they want the meat and potatoes of the show, but I'll be quick. Stefan speaks obviously German and pretty good English. Danielle speaks basically every language in the world besides good English. His English is terrible. We're talking to Danielle, Todd and I, in Spanish for him to translate some stuff to Stefan in German, who will then sometimes translate what Danielle's saying in German to him because he doesn't know the Spanish words for it. It's been fun. It's been like this weird Duolingo Google Translate kind of a week where then sometimes we're all trying to think, how do we express this in Spanish? I don't know. How do you do it in German? And he'll be, I don't know. And we all have Google Translate out. But it's been fun with them in town. Gave James and Todd the week off again. And then I bugged you. So with all that being said, let's catch up with you, dude. Besides, but you've been brewing. It's very hot here. Have you been brewing lately on your own? And then we could talk about the fun experience you had at Hop Fusion.
Yeah, I have been brewing. I haven't been deterred. The one nice thing about it being so hot is that the mosquitoes have not been around this summer. So usually I'm outside during the summer, and in addition to brewing in the heat, you're also getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. But once it gets above about 95, the mosquitoes all go away.
They're
and
gone.
It's been way over 95. So, so yeah, that part's been nice. But yeah, I've been brewing. I brewed my NEIPA the other day, and I'm going to brew a Martzen next week. So
a little late to the game, no?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I am not a fan of drinking Martzen when it's 110 out. So I'm perfectly fine with brewing it about now and having it ready, later September, October.
Are you also then not a fan of brewing it in March and letting it cold condition the entire year like that?
I don't do any of that. I mean, that, that's kind of related to this whole pressure fermentation, Kveik yeast and all. I don't have 15 fermenters that I can just keep, full for 6 months out of the year. So no, I'm turning stuff as quick as I can. So
yeah.
The NEIPA that I brewed on Tuesday, I will pull out of the fermenter probably Wednesday or Thursday next week, and then we're brewing again Friday.
Dang, I like that. You quick turnaround on your fermenters. So
yeah.
So tell me that. So my pop and I brewed a Kolsch. We're celebrating my middle child Esther. I don't know if you remember, she had a brain tumor. She had a craniotomy. She's been 4 years now, coming up on September 17th of tumor free. So we celebrate it every year. And of course, we want beer on tap. And my dad's like, "What should we brew?" I was like, "I've got it. I know." And so we brewed a Kolsch. And on the Grainfather G40, and I might get crucified for this. We didn't live stream it because it was an awkward time and just wanted to get the brew day done and all that. We didn't use their counterflow chiller. I actually used immersion with some ice buckets for a second immersion because I thought that would be, because we were also brewing kind of midday. It was bad timing, bad logistics. The batch turned out good, but I thought in my little lizard brain, it would be easier to get to pitching range with this immersion setup than it was with the counterflow. Are you like you're brewing on Grainfathers, right? Or what do you add? No, pardon me. You have, yeah, go ahead.
I have a Grainfather that I'll use for 5-gallon batches. And then I have a Spike solo that I'll use for 10 or 15 gallon batches.
Right.
So,
But those, what does the Spike, does that a plate chiller for that one, for the solo, or what does it come with?
Well, yeah, I've modified the system quite a bit. So I have the Spike counterflow chiller, and I use that as my Herms coil. So I've got it's a 2-vessel setup now. So even though it's a solo, it's a 2-vessel. So I've got a hot liquor tank that uses the coil to maintain the mash temperature. To avoid any scorching or anything like that, the mash never touches the heating element because of the external Herms. And then when it's time to chill, I take the hot liquor tank off of the chiller and I hook the garden hose up to the chiller. And now it becomes a chiller instead of a Herms. And yeah.
And you have it in the heat, because you're brewing garage brewing, right? Mm-hmm. So you haven't had, what's the time it's been taking you using the counterflow? And what's your groundwater temp? Because mine was
very warm.
Mine's
super
very
warm.
Hot. Yeah.
Yeah. I've started when it's like 90 degrees, the water temp.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've started doing the pre-chiller. So I've got like a copper immersion chiller. So I'll run the garden hose into the copper immersion chiller and put a bunch of ice in a bath, and then it'll come out of the copper and into the counterflow chiller. And that works. But I mean, it uses a ton of ice. I have a buddy who has an ice machine. So I'll go over to his house and fill up a cooler, which is, it's probably 20 pounds of ice, and it'll go through it. It just gone. Yeah. We used it the other day for the NEIPA brew. I was going to try to pitch that at 85 or 90, and we got it down really fast with that. That new Spike that new spike counterflow chiller is really nice because it's got a convoluted copper interior with a stainless exterior, so the heat exchange on it is extremely good.
Nice. I didn't consider doing, because we're doing a pre-chill just into the immersion is what we just did. You're right. I could have done a pre-chill into the counterflow and accomplish the same thing. I don't know why. Again, my lizard brain was just like, no, the immersion will be best in there. They're both kind of slow flow, right? So it's not like the rate of flow was necessarily any stronger or faster with the immersion.
Well, the Grainfather counterflow chiller, you have to watch out with the water flow on that.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that plastic exterior. You can't run that thing wide. You'll burst it.
No.
So you got to watch out with that.
Yeah, it's barely. Well, that's what we're with we did have obviously a faster flow rate with the immersion one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, lizard brain, sometimes in the moment things made sense to me. And this is why I like the podcast, because y'all can't embarrass me or make me feel bad if they write in and go, this is how you should have done it. The counterflow is better than immersion for this reason. Perfect. I'm here to learn. That's what, when I convinced Todd to do this show 7 years ago or 6 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever, it was basically like, I'm going to ask you questions because I need to know. And that's what the show has turned into. But anyway, but it worked out for us. It took us about an hour to get down, like 50 minutes.
Oh, wow.
I know, but that's not necessarily abnormal sometimes when we're brewing outdoors with an asterisk, right? Because we are garage brewing. We did this last batch, but when we brew in the summer.
So what did you get it down to?
69 is what when we finally pitched. It was 69.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was like, we can get to 68 or I was happy at 70, and then my dad distracted me with something, and by the time we turned around, it was 69. I was like, let's get it in there, let's pitch. It was like 50 minutes. I mean, I'm rounding up to an hour, but that's not abnormal for us when we brew all July through mid-September. And in fact, so common. I've told my dad, here's my plan for next year, Jonathan. I just want to brew 50 gallons of Kolsch in January, and then we'll consume it throughout the year, and then like November, 50 more gallons, and then the next time we'll brew will be like April when it's still reasonably good. 50 gallons, and just cold condition all year, because this brewing in the summer is not enjoyable. Outside, even at the barn with Todd, it gets so hot in there. I'm stripping clothes. It's getting awkward between the two of us. It's you brewed in there. Remember how steamy it gets? And you came up in a cold month or not a hot month.
Yeah. Well, it was raining that day.
It was raining that day. Yeah. But anyway, you are brewing. You don't take a break. Your fermenter is empty. You keep brewing. Let's talk. I kind of mentioned it. Hop Fusion is they're Fort Worth.
Fort Worth, yep.
A Fort Worth brewery. And talk about this isn't your first time brewing with the commercial entity, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was.
That's first time.
Oh, I don't know why I thought you've brewed. Okay, so we get this question all the time from people like, because you've been brewing a while and you're very involved in your local scene of brewing, and commercial brewers too. The home brewer, it's not uncommon to be like, people are complimenting my beer. I've been in this for like 5 years. I even got our herms or our rims. I think I understand the process. I want to go pro. What do y'all think we should do? You just had the experience of brewing with the pro system. How was it as a home brewer to be able to do that? What type of system was it? And talk about the recipe you brewed and how that even came to be that you got to brew this with Hop Fusion.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's a lot. Yeah.
Here's a long story. I know. So I'm a member of the Cap and Air Homebrew Club, which is based here. It's mostly people from Fort Worth, but DFW area. And I've been part of that club for, 4 or 5 years. Been brewing for about 8 or 9. And they have this thing called Master Brewer, which is a monthly competition where you put in a beer and they judge it for you, and depending on how they have it set up, whoever wins for the year will get the Master Brewer. So that's what that paddle is there. That's my award, because I won it last year. And one of the things that I got for winning it was I got the opportunity to brew with Hop Fusion. The Cap and Hair Club, it has a lot of alumni who have gone on to open breweries. I think we're up to 5 or 6 now.
Oh, wow.
Which is, that's
a lot.
Kind of crazy.
For one club.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hop Fusion is one of them. And they've been around, I want to say they've been around for 10 years now, something close to that. Well, maybe not that long, maybe 8. Because I think they were kind of starting when I was starting. Because my fermentation chamber that I used for my fermenter, I got from those guys. Because once they were getting ready to open the brewery, they sold off a whole bunch of their homebrew equipment. So I bought it's a big upright freezer, and that's what I stick my CF10 in. Anyway, so the club, they got it arranged where whoever won the master brewer would get to brew with Hop Fusion. So I met with their head brewer. His name's Jeff, and he scaled the recipe up for their pilot system. So I didn't brew on their big system.
Well, sure.
Like, I don't know, 15 barrels or whatever. Yeah. But we brewed on their pilot system, which is it's a RIMS system. And I want to say that we ended up with 3 barrels into the fermenter, 3 or 4 barrels. So, it was basically 7 times the size of my home brew recipe when I brew a 10-gallon batch. So
the biggest batch you've ever brewed, right? I mean, that's the biggest. That's the biggest batch you've ever brewed by far, obviously.
Oh yeah, definitely. But we used the same supplier at the time. Texas Brewing was still open, and so I had been getting all my stuff from them, and they always get their stuff from them,
right?
And so it was easy because it was just the exact same grain and everything, and hops and all that. So they just ordered like 7 times as much. And one day, I want to say it was, when was it? Early May, we went up there and brewed, me and some friends, 3 or 4 of us. And it was cool. They were still doing a regular brew day at the same time. So they're very busy, with all that stuff, but we made it happen. And, so we used their huge commercial grain mill and got it all done. And, big trash cans full of grain as it's milled. You bring it over to the mash tun, throw it all in there.
The milling takes forever, right? Well, I mean, maybe not for the pilot system, but I've heard milling can be a process for big craft breweries. Like, I mean, I'm just like the time consumption. Like, if
no, it was
bad.
I mean, it's a huge mill. It's, it's a very, like, they had a big tray. You just set your whole bag of grain up on this stainless tray that's above the mill and slice it open with a blade, and it all just funnels in there. So it didn't take very long at all.
That's
15 minutes.
That's super cool. And like you said, you're fortunate because one of the things, like I was saying with the Trub Club in our recipes, we make these recipes since we've had Muntins and Hops Direct hop on board, specifically Muntins and all of them, Imperial as well. We are, wanting the recipes end up a certain way because of these ingredients. And so for you lucked out because you're like, y'all use my same supplier. Like, it's not a have to substitute. Like, my recipe really called for this, but we can get Breeze, or we can get Country Malt or whatever, Canadian Superior. Yeah. You're like, okay, I guess. But so you literally they were able to just scale up yours. And did it turn out 1-for-1 in the final result? Because you had a grand opening or a debut on tap in their tap room, 3 weeks ago?
It was early July.
Oh, was it early July? I thought it was early August. Yeah. Okay.
I want to say it was over 4th of July weekend that they put it on tap, and I didn't know it was coming on tap. It was just like, oh, here it is, and because they have their regular production going, so they had to find a spot where they could put this small batch on tap, and I think it ended up being 3 barrels worth, 3 half barrels worth when it was all said and done. And so they put it on tap, and I went up there. So I was out of town when it went on tap because it was over 4th of July. So as soon as I got back in town, I went up there and I was like, okay, I need to test this out and make sure it's okay. And it was good. It was funny because there was a guy sitting next to me at the bar. I just walked to the bar and ordered it. And this guy's like, "Have you ever had that beer before?" And I was like, "No."
I love it.
And he's like, "I just had some. It's really good."
Oh,
and I was like, "Oh."
Okay,
so it was really funny. So
you're like, I lied.
To this guy for a few minutes. I talked to him. Well, I mean, I hadn't had that one before. So yeah, I talked to him for a few minutes before I let him know that this is actually my beer. It was cool though because it had my name on the menu board, and so I was like, "Yeah, I'm that guy." Here's my ID.
You're not self-deprecating enough because when the guy would ask me, "Have you had this yet?" I'd be like, "It's garbage. It is hot garbage. You don't want," especially if I liked the beer. I do that to my family all the time. When my parents, both of them, I'd give my mother credit, obviously, because she does probably most of the work in regards to getting their property ready for hosting, but they have family events there all the time. And so we always have our beer on tap. And people be like, well, how is that? It's terrible. You don't want it because I don't want them to drink all my beer. Like, yeah, it's terrible. Right. It's terrible. You don't want it. What kind of a question is that? Just try it. I brewed it. What am I supposed to say? How did that one turn out? It turned out bad. It tastes like ashes because I was smoking cigars into the wort and just blowing and ashing into it. But no, that's how cool to hear. I mean, because as a home brewer, sometimes we can feel like people are buttering us up that are our friends or our family. And even when it seems sincere, I don't have imposter syndrome fully, but I'm like, they're just being nice. But a total stranger is like, I just had that. That was really good. Yeah, I bet you're kind of peacocking around.
Yeah.
You're like,
it
is
good.
It was
cool. It was cool. Yeah.
Like the
we had a couple of.
Oh, go ahead.
We had a couple of events too. We had an event, later that week. A bunch of friends and family came up there, and neighbors, and we had about 30 people for that. And then a week after that, the Homebrew Club, we do a happy hour every month, and so we had like 30 people from the club came up there, and the kegs did not last very long.
Dude, that's awesome. That's the best feeling. And also the worst feeling. It's simultaneously good and bad because you're like, oh, everyone loved it, and they're like, I'm out. Everyone loved it. Oh, that's so. Is that what you just brewed then, or pardon me, what you're about to switch to kegs? Is that the same recipe? Because you said you had a.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same base recipe. It's funny. The name, we call it "Don't Change Anything" because I think I brewed it about 25 times now, and the first 5 or 10 or whatever, I was just kind of dialing it in, figuring out the process, figuring out the hops, figuring out the water, because water is a big part of NEIPAs. And then finally I got one that was like really good. And my brother-in-law is like, okay, don't change anything. Whatever you did, just do that. So it's kind of a joke of a name though, because I actually, every time I brew it, I mess around with hops or whatever. So yeah. Even though we call it "Don't Change Anything," I'm always changing it a little bit.
Do you, off the top of your head, do you mind divulging like the 5-gallon? Like what's the grain bill? What the hops you use?
Yeah, it's off the top of my head. So the base malt is Mutton's Planet.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
That's a big portion of it, and that's actually Hop Fusion uses that grain for a lot as their base grain for a lot of their beers too. So. Yeah, I don't know. It's like 80% of that. And then I use a lot of oat malt, which is not typical. Most people really use flaked oats or flaked wheat in their NEIPAs, but I started using a lot more oat malt, and because it's not flaked, it actually has a husk on it, so you don't have all the issues with the flow through the grain bed. And I do still use some of the flake wheat and the flake oats, but I use a lot more of the oat malt. And then for the hops, I use Citra Mosaic and Eldorado, and I usually use like Citra and Eldorado in the whirlpool. There's no hops in the boil, which Macy, the owner over at Hop Fusion, we were brewing it. He's like, what kind of world are we living in where there's no hops in the boil? So yeah, there's no hops in the boil. There's quite a bit in the whirlpool. And then I dry hop twice during fermentation. Once I do about 24 hours in when the fermentation is very active. and then I'll do another one towards the end as I'm getting into the cold crash. So yeah, and then I use Voskovite.
That's what I was going to get to. Yeah,
for the yeast.
Yeah, you're a huge fan of that.
Oh man, that yeast is fantastic. I mean, just from a homebrew perspective. So when I do my homebrew batch, I put 11.5 gallons into the fermenter, and I use one dry packet of yeast. Which, I mean,
that's incredible.
Right there, that's saving you
for sure
$6, whatever it is. I mean, and the stuff is an absolute beast. So
it rips.
And I fermented it at 85 to 90 degrees. It's pretty much done already from Tuesday. So
and because of the temperatures that we're having in Texas, your temperature controlling it to that, or that's just the range it's experiencing in your garage?
I control it.
Okay.
I control it.
In that stand-up freezer you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that compressor's not working hard at all.
No. Well, I mean, it's, in the garage, it's, 95 or whatever. So I don't put any heat on it.
Right.
In the winter, I will. In the winter, when it's out there, if I want it to be, usually in the winter, I'll let it go a little lower. Like maybe I'll do it 80 or 85 because I don't want to just be heating things all the time. Just, wasting electricity. And I've done it all between 80 and 90 and 95. And I don't really notice any taste difference.
That's what you read my mind. I was about to ask, is there a huge fluctuation of taste when you go down 10 degrees?
I haven't noticed any. No, there's so much hops in this beer that I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I want to say it's about a pound for 10 gallons, which is
so much.
I want to say it's about 10 ounces in the Whirlpool and 6 in the dry hop, but the dry hop stuff is usually cryo hops.
Yeah.
So,
obviously, I had you on because you're the Marut minute. We're actually in the Marut 45th minute because I've been small talking us to death. I apologize, but I do want to cover you do every batch you brew under pressure nowadays. Like are you full James Carlson, or is it depend on the style?
James is he has become the expert on this. It sounds like he is doing it even more than I do. So
right. So one of the questions that we've had before, and we've talked and privately about some of the things I say and flub, and then I don't know if it's just my brain that I don't hear what you say, and then I flub again the next episode. So I was like, I got to have you on. One of the confusions some people get, or they ask a lot, it's not even just confusion, they just want to know, when you're pressure fermenting, like the IPA, the NEIPA you're talking about, that's an ale. And you're using a yeast strain that's specifically intended for higher temps, right? Like it performs good at higher temps. And when you're doing a lager, which is traditionally, fermented cold, and it normally takes a little bit longer, and you have to do these steps to ensure that, like the diacetyl rest and then bringing it up to temp and all that.
Yep.
The pressure, people ask frequently. We did a lot. We took a question last week or 2 weeks ago because you had messaged me after you heard the question where they're like, hey, I'm doing a lager and I'm going to do it under pressure, and here's the temperature. That's basically the temperature of the diacetyl rest, right? Do I still need to do something in that part? I'm sure, you probably hear that all the time too from your club or whatever, people doing that. Can you talk about pressure fermentation as it applies to ales versus lagers? Is it just a blanket-wide technique? Do you adjust depending on that base lager and ale, and then we can branch off there of like what styles of ales also do you tweak it for, whatever. But the base level stuff like lagers and ales and pressure fermentation, is it a one size fits all approach?
Okay, so lots of things.
Again, I like to do that.
Yeah, so my NEIPA, I do not pressure ferment that, at least not on purpose. Last batch, I did it on accident. The first 24 hours, I forgot to crack open the blow-off cane. And so I went out there the next morning because it was time to pitch the first round of dry hops. I went out there and the PRV's at 15 PSI. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to open the blow off, and it didn't matter. It didn't change anything. So that was interesting. I just released the pressure, threw the hops in, and then I opened the thing and it went crazy like it always does. It didn't change anything. that beer has a ton of yeast character and a ton of hops, so it didn't really affect anything. The area that I see pressure fermentation more for is for beers that are supposed to be pretty neutral. A pretty neutral yeast character. So, I mean, lagers are, perfect example of that. There's not supposed to be a whole lot of yeasty taste to most lagers. And if you stress yeast, whether it's by having too much sugar in your wort, there's all these factors for yeast, right? And if you look on the yeast packet, it'll usually say, okay, original gravity between here and here. And why is that? I mean, if you think about something that's like super sugar, like honey, right? Honey, you open a bottle of honey, it never goes bad. It's pure sugar, but nothing can live in it because there's so much sugar. And so wort is like that. If you have a wort that's very high gravity, there's some yeast that won't like that. So what do you have to do? You have to pitch more yeast, right? So sometimes they'll say, well, put in 2, 3, 4 packets to compensate for yeast's inability to deal with that much sugar. So, sugar content's a big thing. pH can be a thing for yeast if you have a pH that's really out of range. And generally, we don't have that big of an issue with that with brewing because the malts and the water generally get pH in a range that yeast will be happy. But a pH that's out of range can stress yeast. And then temperature is the big one. Every packet of yeast, it's going to say between here and here. And, the manufacturers determine that, hey, as long as you keep it in this range, it's probably, it's going to produce what it should. Now, if you go outside of that range, let's say if you go low, right? So if you have a yeast that's happy at 60 degrees and you put it in your fridge and it's 40 degrees, what happens? It gets really slow. And maybe it doesn't finish. Right. Maybe it stalls at 10:30 or something like that. So that's the low side. Now think about if you do it on the high side. If you have a yeast that's happy at 60 and you do it at 90, what happens? It blows through that. Yeah. It blows through that wort super fast. Yep. Right. So it's done really fast and it probably tastes pretty bad.
Off flavored galore. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You get ethyl alcohol and all that stuff in there and it doesn't taste good. So, pressure fermentation is trying to deal with the warmer side of the equation. And a lot of it's kind of anecdotal, but if you go online and, you do Google search for yeast and pressure fermentation, there's a spreadsheet that's out there and people have done experiments and it'll list all these different yeasts, the USO5 and everything else. And it'll say, okay, I used this much pressure at this temperature and everything was fine. And, so that can give you a guide. But when you're looking at yeast like, USO5. So it's a neutral ale yeast. A lot of people use it for pale ales, IPAs, things like that. But if you ferment it way too high, it's not going to taste good. Right. So put some pressure on it and avoid that problem for sure.
See, and you already answered one of my segues, but I'll point it out so people, if they didn't catch it, the strain, like when we've talked a while ago, I think when I had you on the show and like we got a strain of Kvike for the Trub Club. I don't know if you remember that. And because it was kind of like, look, guys, y'all can do this without pressure and it's going to turn out this great IPA, or you can do it with pressure and at whatever temp or whatever. But the strain, like you're talking about, pressure is intended with strains that don't do well warmer. And you still don't want to be, you are going to ferment in that range and still get the beer as it was intended to taste because you have pressure. That's what its real intention is. Like you would, like you said, your NEIPA, you're using Voss, right? Kvike. You're not gonna purposefully do pressure because you don't need to. It's an unnecessary step. We're like with my Kolsch, everyone agreed who wrote in because they're like, my office, it was like 108 on the low end that whole week outside. So my office was really struggling to get below 70 consistently and not making weird noises. This little mini split I have up there. So I was like, Dad, it's at 69. That's technically in the range of Dieter. I'm gonna do it with pressure just to be safe. You still think if it was at 70 or 71, it would have been fine without pressure, or would that have been enough? Right. See, that face you made makes me feel better, because it's like, I don't want to chance it.
Right. No, I wouldn't chance it either. And when I do stuff in the house, so in other words, not under temperature control, I'll do it with pressure, because I mean, it's by the window, so it's on the outside wall, so it's kind of warm. And I do have those little floaty things in the wort, so I know I can see what the temperature's actually doing. And because I did one of the alt fermentations with that. So it was a 5-gallon conical, stainless conical. And it fluctuated between 85 and 75, just with the natural variation of the house.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
And the other thing you got to remember too is that especially during that initial part of the fermentation, that yeast is creating heat. It is making its own heat. So if you have, say, a thermometer that's stuck to the outside of a plastic or glass carboy, you're measuring the wall. Okay, you're not measuring the temperature in the middle of that wort.
That's a great point.
And I bet it's warmer than you think it is.
Yeah.
So fluctuations in temperature can be stressful for yeast too. So that's another good reason to use pressure, because, like I said, I did that all with pressure in the house, and it tastes the same.
Yeah. Here's a question. Here's a question that I get a lot in one variation or another, where people want to know: is it harmful or detrimental is probably a strong word. Harmful is a strong word. For, like, let's say my office was at 65 consistently, and I still had it under pressure. Am I going to get a Kolsch that would be different had I not done pressure? Like, we've talked a little bit on the show with Todd and James, where the assumption is, you know what? Some of the things you want the yeast to produce might be overly suppressed because you did it at normal temp and you did it under pressure.
Right.
Is that?
Yeah, Todd mentioned that. Yeah, because Todd mentioned that in the last episode, because he did correctly point out that one of the things that makes Kolsch what it is that it does have a little bit of fruity esters. And he's right, but it's very subtle. It's a very subtle amount. And my guess is that, remember, Kolsch is a lager that's fermented at ale temperature.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, it's hybrid. Yeah.
So most lagers are done in the 50s, say, but Kolsch is done warmer. It's done more than ale temperature. So my guess is that the Kolsch yeast strains are actually lager strains that have been selected for the esters that they put out at higher temperatures. They like those esters that come out of a Kolsch yeast at those slightly warmer ale temperatures are desirable. And that would be my guess as to how the whole thing evolved in that particular part of the world. And then they've harvested that yeast for us to use over time.
Would you say then, does pressure inherently suppress those esters regardless of the temperature of the environment it's fermenting in? Is that no matter what style you're doing, or we're talking Kolsch specifically, I'll stay on track.
Yeah.
If I did it at 85 degrees and under pressure, is the pressure going to suppress it regardless of the fermentation temperature?
I think it will, but I don't think it's going to mess it up. The Kolsch that I brought you guys at the ranch last time I came out there a little over a year ago.
I remember, yeah.
That was a Kolsch yeast that was done at 80 degrees at 10 psi.
I remember because we tried it, and you're like, that was under pressure, because that was when you were really. It was Yumi and Todd at the time, at the ranch. I think we had either just recorded or about to record that one-off we did, which is very popular and widely consumed, people where you're showing the various means of pressure fermentation or using the CAD to ferment in, the floating dip tube, all that stuff. Yeah. You brought your I don't remember if you brought your spiked PRV at that one or what you brought to show, all the toys you brought.
Sometime I did. Yeah.
But I do remember various beers you sharing with us, and we tried to be like, that was under pressure, and that was under pressure. Like, like making the point of being, because we were, we're old dogs, or Todd and James are old dogs. I'm a aging dog, and new tricks isn't a thing. Now it is, though, right? Just like you said, James is full on that.
Yeah, he's full into it.
He loves it. He loves doing lagers at room temp under pressure. And they've been they've been bangers, man. Every one I've had of his lately has just been incredible. And
so if you did your Kolsch side by side, like if you had two identical fermenters and you did one at 65 degrees with no pressure, you did another one at 85 with pressure, side by side, maybe you could tell the difference.
I have to do that now, right? I mean, I have like that. Yeah. This is all conceptual that we're talking because, and that's it's what theoretical. And that's what I love about brewing, though, because someone's going to write in and be like, "You idiot! Of course, there's a difference because of this and this and this," and then someone else will write in and be like, "No, yeah, you nailed it." Like I love it. It all comes down to just doing it and then deciding which version you like best, and then just doing that. Like for like the reason why. Yeah, go ahead.
There's some other benefits to it, right? I mean, if you put CO2 on, like if you cold crash it and it's been under pressure and you just keep adding CO2, you can pull it out of that fermenter and put it in your keg. It'll already be carbonated.
Oh, that's a great point.
So that's nice.
That's super nice. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, the other thing, you're always worried about sealed fermenters and explosions and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
If you get to the end of fermentation, and if you as long as you have positive pressure on that fermenting vessel, you can cold crash it and not have to worry about it collapsing.
Yeah, you've told me that before because I think I reached out to you like, hey, I'm about to do this. What do I do so I don't,
just make sure you have some pressure in that thing.
Make sure. Yeah. It's
but it's funny that and I did that little one in the house. Over time, the pressure on the gauge it'll go away, and it's going away because it's going into the beer.
Because it's going into the beer, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
The carbonation is going into the beer.
I'll tell you the truth, man. The reason why I did this batch the way we did it, the main reason was my office was on the higher end of the temperature range, but also this is basically how I did the batch. We ended up taking to Homebrew Con. Todd has a tiny bit left on tap. We already floated our keg of it at my pops. That was my favorite batch I think I ever brewed, and I was just going for consistent variable. Like I'm going to do it the exact way I did it the last time because the last time turned out incredible. And it was almost a 1-for-1 brew day. I was able to, when I brewed that last batch, I did it early in the morning. And by the time I was cooling my groundwater, first off, it wasn't the 100-degree days yet. Right. And my groundwater was cooler and I was so cooling didn't take as long, but this batch, I have a keg of it, cold conditioning in there that I used the event faucet to draw off of. It turned out fantastic. So, I'll probably forever keep doing it like this. Where I'm going to do it at 70 or under pressure, and just always. Do
so it still tastes like a Kolsch, right? You still have the little bit of fruity esters.
Like you said there, because it's always subtle. Like you don't get Fru. Which, by the way, what distributor here in Texas decided to stop carrying Fru now? I can't find it. I can't get it. My HEB doesn't have it. HEB in New Braunfels at the new one they did, the German one, they stopped carrying it. Spets and I can't get Fru anymore. I was going to write into Fru, but they don't care. I tagged them once in a social media post. Like, look, I have Fru in America. They don't care. They couldn't care less.
Wow.
You're not dead to me, Fru, but I can't drink you anymore. So I don't know what to do. I just have to keep brewing. It's like, it's a problem, but we're able to get Reisdorf. I like Reisdorf. It's all right. Yeah. Gaffel's not my favorite. I'll drink Gaffel. It's not. I'll drink good Kolsch. I'm hoping maybe more domestic breweries just up their Kolsch game, and I say more. I've been having great. So, Real Ale. Have you had their Cruiser Kolsch yet?
No,
dude.
I don't think so.
You drink their beer at all or no? I mean, because they're closer to me than you. You've got great beer, DFW, so you're spoiled already with great local beer. But I've got
I'm hoping to get down there in about a month.
Oh,
we're going down for a Oktoberfest weekend with some friends in Fredericksburg and New Braunfels. So I hope we're going to get out to Real Ale too.
Hey, I'll crash it coincidentally. Just let me. And Jonathan, what are you doing here?
That joint that you told me about last time, the German. What's the name of that place?
Krautz's.
Yeah, we're going there for sure.
Wasn't it incredible? And
I wonder
if
it was just like being in Munich. It was just like it was fantastic.
I love that place. And they had Frew. I don't. You know what? I should ask them if they still have it on tap, because I can't get it retail. And now they might have distributors for commercial beer is probably run different than it is for retail. So maybe that's all the conspiracy. Go get me to pay $9 for it's not $9. Well, what is it over there for? It's not cheap though. That's the problem there. Great beer, but also 2023 beer prices. And so it's not, you're not getting out of there cheap.
I did a flight when I was there because I wanted to try a bunch of different Kolsch's, and because you guys are very snobby about the local Kolsch scene. So I got, the Reisdorf and the Frew and then the local stuff and did some comparisons. So
my favorite right now though, Real Ale's Cruiser Kolsch is my favorite domestic Kolsch. It's great.
All right.
It's fantastic.
I'll look for it.
It's consistent. It's good. It's about what you expect to pay for craft beer for a six pack. I've really enjoyed it. Real Ale. I'm a kind of a fanboy. We had their former, I don't remember if they burned bridges or whatever, but Eric Odershock was a great interview. He gave us a great tour of their campus right before it got all upgraded to the very, very nice and modern place. But their place is beautiful. I'm going to try to make it there for their Oktoberfest party in 2 weekends.
Oh yeah. That's the one. That's on our list of things to do that weekend.
Let me know. Hey man, their Oktoberfest party. So I won't even have to crash it because I'll probably just be there. But their Hans Pils, for my money, is the best domestic German Pilsner made in the country, for United States of American breweries. Hans Pils from Real Ale. That's a free sponsored or a free shout out. They don't give me money. I wish they gave me money. I wish they gave me beer, or just
maybe I'll send you a keg.
Return my calls. after Eric got out of there, I tried to name drop him. Like, this was 6. Like, we've been doing the show I think 7 years, and this was like 5 years ago, right before COVID. I'm like, hey, we'd love to get you back on if Eric's available. They're like, Eric's not here anymore, and then they never reply to any of my other messages. I was like, no, they're like, me and Eric are great friends. I hate the guy. What do I have to do to get you back? But they're great. Anyways, let me get us back on track. I'm so sorry. So the lagers versus ales, like you said, it pressure is for, I can't get it down to the normal range of the strain I'm going to use. Nothing else in the brew day process matters except for your yeast choice and its range, right? I mean, in regards to when you implement pressure. And also the style, right? So Todd mentioned it last time, a wheat beer with pressure. Probably not. I mean, you think about some of the famous Hefeweizens that are fermented in shallow, open containers, right? Because you don't have any there's no head pressure because it's shallow, right? I've heard other podcasts that talk about it, watching out using even airlocks with hef strains because you can stall the yeast. It doesn't like that pressure. Interesting.
Yeah.
No way. And I think of that when Todd brewed the last Hefeweizen he always uses a blow-off tube. But yeah, that thing was motorboating like within 3 hours. Like, it was quick. I forgot what strain of yeast that Imperial specifically pushes for wheat beers. Not Stefan. Or maybe it is Stefan. Well, I don't know actually what it is for their Hefes, but either way, but his blow off tube, you're right. He did. There was no pressure on his, but and like you said, so if it's 100 and something and your garage is 90 something, that's the style that you'd go. I'm probably just not your ferment if I don't have the temperature control to keep it in the range it wants to be in, because you're not trying to affect the integrity of what the yeast brings to the table of that beer, right? Because like the pressure would undoubtedly suppress the majority of that, and now it's a fundamentally different beer than intended.
Yeah. I mean, I've never tried to pressure ferment a wheat yeast before, but I'm guessing that you would lose a ton of the flavor. And it might not even finish. It might just stall at 10:30 and say, I'm done. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You mean, think of another like Belgian yeast, right? Huge yeast character.
Yeah. Astringency from the yeast. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not something you would want to suppress.
Yeah.
So it's more about these more neutral styles.
And which is funny because that's what James and I are brewing, and we're the ones really doing pressure. You know what I mean? Like we're German lagers. You're like, yeah, pressure all day, baby. At room temp, like that's perfect. But you're right.
Room temp.
If James had just a odd hair, he would be like, I want to brew a Belgian triple. You'd be like, no, not under pressure. You should probably, follow the patch.
Yeah, and a lot of those yeasts will tolerate higher temperatures fine anyway. So.
Yeah, you want to speaking of wheat beers, just to give some fuel to Todd watching this at home, make fun of me to remind me. My dad and I didn't do it under pressure. We haven't brewed a Hefeweizen in 3 or 4 years, but the last one we did, out of habit, we weren't thinking, we did do a secondary. And so I know, right? Yeah, you can laugh at me. It's okay. And so I was posting on like social media at that point, like, oh, just transferred it was the Homebrew Supply had a recipe called Hefeweizen. And so we were transferring the Hefeweizen today, and people are like, did you primary in that, Carboy? Like, no, secondary. Like, you idiot. You don't secondary a wheat beer. Like, it was the clearest Hefeweizen in the history of Hefeweizens. Well, I was like, it's pretty. It's pretty. Yeah. I don't drink it anyway. I couldn't care less. We had it on tap for summer, maybe a 4th of July party that year or something. Wheat beer is great for the summer, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I'm told. Yeah. I'm boring. Like, I'm asking you all these questions about other styles because I'm not going to brew them. You're like, well, yeah, for a Belgian, you don't want to do. Yeah, I'm not brewing it. I'm not brewing a Belgian. This is all for Todd.
Just goals. All goals.
That's what I'm saying. And the alt cup, the alt Pokal, pardon me, is getting me really in the mood to have. I think James is brewing an alt coming up. I don't know this week because the CMB Schankenlagen people are in town. If they want to brew, he'll do it in a heartbeat. But we got the yeast from Imperial late last week for this month's recipe kit, and then I had some extra stuff, Dieter and whatnot, and James was like looking through and goes, oh my gosh, I'm gonna brew an alt. And I was like, yes, oh my gosh, you are. It's gonna be great.
Yeah,
I love it. And I'm curious though, because I don't know if he's done an alt since, I'm lying, he did. He took one to HomebrewCon. It was great. I don't recall if he did that under pressure. I'm gonna assume he did. He's been doing everything under pressure. And I wonder, the alt strain is very similar to the Cole strain in regards to its range and all that. And it's probably the same, right? Like they're so close together. It's the same.
I think, what strain is he using for that? Is it,
so Kaiser is the alt strain from Imperial. Yes.
Yeah. I think that was when I left you guys that voicemail last time, I had looked up, I think it was Dieter and Kaiser. I think were the two or maybe it was Harvest. I don't know. But I remember there was a tiny overlap. Like they were both 60, but one of them was on the low end of 60 and one of them was 60 and above. But that's why I said, well, you can do 60 and it'll be fine for either.
Yeah, absolutely. For either. Yeah. What else did I want to talk to you about before? I go on such long side. So I already asked you about, we talked about lagers and ales. Oh, the diacetyl rest part, I mean, just to quickly cover it, right? So you did also kind of reaffirm what we had said, I believe in your last voicemail about like it being, because my assumption was you're doing a lager and let's say you're doing it at, room temp, like 75 or 74 and it's under pressure. That negates the need to bring it up you can
because you already did
right. And again, to me that's a huge perk for me lagers. Even so, first off, getting temperature control is the first hurdle for most people traditionally looking to brew lagers. Like it's I need a fermentation chamber or depending on where they live. Like here in Texas, like you want to do lagers the OG way, I got to have temperature control. I can't be willy-nilly in a closet unless I'm keeping my house really cold or it's the winter. Like I just can't do it, without something consistent so that I can make, because the end goal for all of us as brewers is good, consistent beer or consistently good beer. And so with the pressure, it's a game changer because you're also eliminating the steps of, okay, it's finishing now and it's been 3 days and now I'm got to bump up the temperature a little so that this diacetyl doesn't just become overwhelming and I have butter beer when it's all said and done. I've been to some microbreweries that obviously forgot that step, or they there was one that was actually trying to sell it as like grandma's butter beer, and I was like, no, you just had a bad batch and you're trying to get people to pay for it.
That's not good.
But the pressure, boom, now you did the whole fermentation, the primary, at room temp under pressure. There is no diacetyl rest. It's been achieved. When you hit your numbers, you're at 1010 or whatever your lager calls for. You move on. You keg it, or the Todd Burns of the world secondary it for more clarity or whatever. But your fermentation, for the most part, not for the most part, with all intents and purposes, that it's done. There is no other step, right? With the lager under pressure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You did it at a warm enough temperature that the diacetyl is already.
Diacetyl, sorry. It's like Trub and True, buddy. All right.
Diacetyl, whatever, yeah.
No, I like diacetyl. We did corrected on that. We did corrected on Trub. What else did I get corrected on? I always just blame my speech impediment, which is not even
there you go.
Yeah. Or I play the minority card. Thanks, Mom. I'm just like, oh, are you correcting me because I'm Latino? Like, you're Latino? Oh, you don't think I'm Latino? Now I sound like a really bad George Lopez from the 90s. Hey, I'm Latino. Anyway, I can do that accent, friends. I can do it. My mom's Mexican. I won't do my Speedy Gonzalez impression, though, for the show. Before I let you go, though.
I was going to say the other yeast option that you have, if you don't have temperature control, if you don't have temperature control and you don't have lager, pressure, and you want to do a lager, then you use Lutra yeast.
You talked about that the last time you were on the show. You evangelized for Lutra hard, which is good because the pseudo-lager kind of I don't want to say it became a thing, but people with Lutra, which who's the main Omega, and they sell it dry now as well.
Yes, they sell it dry.
So they have liquid version of it. They sell it dry as well. And people on Reddit, people on Homebrew Talk, people on Facebook groups have become big believers of the pseudo-lager, which I don't think that's in the BJCP guidebook as a style. We all call it that because it's pseudo, as in it wasn't fermented cold.
It wasn't done cold.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a lager yeast.
I will give it to you, and I will tell you it's an alt beer, and you will not know.
I like it.
I mean, you don't have to. I mean, you don't. I mean, it's not like you serve somebody a Kolsch and you say, "This is Kolsch that was made with Coln yeast."
No, absolutely.
Or made with Dieter. It was made with whatever.
I agree.
Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody cares what yeast it was.
I agree.
So
unless it's bad,
so who cares?
Then you ask. Then you ask. Like,
you're like, what is this? Yeah.
If you're a brewer,
but no, I mean it's you give somebody a beer and they're like, oh yeah, that tastes like a Pilsner or a malt or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't know. I will tell you though, the challenge with that is to get it clear. Because if you don't have pressure and you don't have temperature control, you're not going to be able to cold crash, right? If you can't cold, because if you can't control the fermentation temperature, you probably can't cold crash. So you're going to put it in a keg, and then it's going to clarify in the keg, and shortly it'll be clear in the keg. You can do like Todd and transfer it to another keg.
Yeah, he was big on that.
It's not a huge deal, but it'll take a little bit of time to clear up.
Absolutely. Yeah. But
it's definitely, I mean, it's just another tool, right?
Another tool.
Yeah. If you can't pressurize and you can't control temperature, then you use Lutra. Yeah. And you do it at 85 or 90 degrees.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But it's not a lager yeast just for clarity. Like it's a Kveik. That's what I was going to say. Just let me, that's also the reason it's called pseudo-lager is the temperature it's done at, but the strain being used. Because a stickler, a pedantic German perhaps, would say it cannot be a lager. It was using a Kveik, a Norwegian strain.
Exactly.
It cannot be a lager. It cannot. Let me try. I don't know if I can do a Stefan impression. He's like, Josh, no, you're not funny. That's kind of, yeah, that's right. He's, but that's just German Todd. Like that, like, hey, Josh, you're not very funny. And then just, yeah, Josh, you were not funny. Like, but they do sound the same. They almost kind of look the same too. Anyways, the pedantic Germans.
But I do want to say too, the whole deal, some people are like, you don't need to pressure ferment as a home brewer. The commercial breweries don't do this. So why are you doing this? This is dumb, and it's like, well, because if you do the math on these huge fermenting vessels, right? So they're not under pressure, but the head pressure of all that liquid. So if you have a fermenter that's 10 feet tall, it's just like, you dive to the bottom of Todd's swimming pool and your head's like, that's pressure.
Yep.
Bottom of a 10-foot pressure or water column is 4.5 PSI. You get to a 20-foot tall fermenter and it's 10 PSI. So now we're doing is recreating the same thing.
Yeah.
That breweries already, they've been doing it for 500 years in Germany, and they didn't have a pressure gauge on the side of their things.
No Spunding valve?
They didn't have a Spunding valve. But they didn't know about yeast either.
They did.
When they made the German beer purity law. So,
yeah.
So we're recreating these conditions that these giant breweries have been using for hundreds of years.
Ever. For the history of beer.
Yeah.
And civilization, or in civilized civilization. Speaking of Spunding valves, that's actually jogged my memory, and I think I wrote it down. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask your opinion, because we get this a lot too, and I don't know the definitive answer. I'll give you my answer after you give me yours, and then I'll just be like, yeah, that's what I told people. When people get a Spunding valve at first, and it's not the most common piece of equipment, and it's not even the most commonly talked about in groups. A lot of people, the majority of homebrewers still aren't really utilizing pressure, right? They're just not. Like, the more and more are doing it, but it's just when you go in groups and it's the OG kind of guys or whatever, that's just still not a mainstream thing yet. So people will write in and be like, I got the Spunding valve. I'm going to use my keg to ferment. Do I set the pressure on the keg first, or like an all-rounder? Do I fill that thing with pressure to set it, or do I adjust the gauge after pressure's being built in the vessel? I always tell them, like, for me, I have the beer in front of me, and it's normally a one and done for me, like, where I used the Spunding valve the first time, it got to 10, and then when I was done with it, when I put it back on the next batch, hey, it stopped at 10. It's like, okay, that's the setting of the Spunding. What would you recommend to someone with a brand new one to set it with pressure on the device, like on the fermenter or on the keg before the batch is fermenting? Or do you think it's a reactive thing of let pressure build up and then adjust your valve?
Yeah, do you have time to sit there and watch the pressure build up and then turn it down?
I do. I work for Todd.
If you do, then do that. But I'm busy, so like I'll get my fermentation going and then I'll leave it for a day and then I'll come back. And so if you have time to sit there and watch the pressure come up and then adjust it, you can do that. Most people don't. So what I would do is I would fill a keg. If you're kegging already, you've got kegs that have 10 or 12 PSI or whatever in them. Close the valve all the way off, stick it on the gas port. It's going to show 10 or 12. Start backing it off until you start hearing it hissing out. Now it's set for 10.
Yep.
So stick it on your fermenter.
That's what I tell people who get the first time. And 9 out of 10 times that holds its setting in regards to future uses. Every now and then it's, it got up to 12. Oh no, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, one time I did actually forget to open it, and it was, I came back to check on the batch and it was at like 20 or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. Adjust it there. It didn't explode. I wasn't in there for it to, and I think the all-rounder, I think set for 35 anyway, before the PRV supposed to work. Yeah, I think it's 35. Maybe it's 30. Okay. It's pretty high. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty it's pretty high. Yeah. What are the spike conicals?
The spike ones are 15.
Are they really 15? So yours that batch you're talking about earlier set off the PRV, or it was right at the precipice of you didn't hear it? You didn't smell
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. No.
Yeah.
It probably did.
Someone's gonna write in and be like, Josh, you're lying to people. The all-rounder is actually 15. I don't know why 30 or 35.
I think it is higher.
I think it is too. Like, but
Yeah.
I don't have it in here. I can't run and check, and I'm not going to edit that in. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, okay.
And then the kegs are like 120.
They're high. Yeah, no, kegs are very high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
120, 130, something like that.
Yeah, I would
that little PR,
yeah.
that little thing that we pull will go on its own at 130.
Correct. Well, that's what I said. When people ferment with a pressure ferment in a keg, and they're like, "Oh, do I need to watch the pressure and adjust?" I'm like, "You're fine. Like, you could come back in the middle of the first day of fermentation, whatever, and then adjust it if they didn't want to fill up another." But like you said, the best strategy is you probably already have extra kegs, or at least the keg that you're about to use anyway.
Yeah.
Set your spunding valve on that. And then now it's ready to go. And then you don't have to sit, like you said, no one has time to just sit there.
You don't have time to sit there and watch it.
Does.
You're going to forget, you'll be like, "Oh, I'll come back in a few hours," and you're going to forget.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, dude, I appreciate you so much for doing this today. I took up way more of your time than I intended, probably because of all my stupid small talk at the beginning, but we got to have you back at the ranch soon. Get you coming and brewing. I don't know if you want to come until it gets below 90. I have no idea you're playing, but then the pool doesn't feel as good though. So
that's right.
Yeah. I was sitting, real quick story, because I've already drawn this out long enough. I was sitting in the hot tub with the German, and just sitting there and just like, "This is the life." He's like, "Yes, Josh, this is the life." And I wish I would have recorded that, because I want that to be like a motivational thing I wake up to every day as a German going, "This is the life." Me in a hot tub with him. But anyways, Jonathan, my friend, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, I appreciate it, and hopefully we get to hang out soon.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thanks, buddy. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or even better, be Todd's best friend and leave us a voicemail at 325-305-6107. Thank you to our sponsors like Munton's Malt, premium grains for a better brew day. If you aren't already brewing with Munton Malts, give them a try by joining our Trub Club at a recipe receiving level. For the best hops available online, give our friends at hopsdirect.com a visit and pick up what you need for your next brew day. Also, get a pack of Imperial yeast along with premium recipes from us when you join the Trub Club. Go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us. On behalf of the absent Todd Burns, the absent James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thanks for listening.